al-Sadi and Ibn Mukhtar, two 17th century Timbuktu historians, tell a story that may or may not be true about an incident leading to the Moroccan invasion of the Songhai Empire. It is claimed that sometime in 1589, a slave born in the Songhai royal house named Wuld Kirinfel was imprisoned at Takhaza in the Sahara. The slave escaped and fled to Marrakesh in Morocco, where he claimed to be a brother of Askia Ishaq II. Wuld Kirinfil supposedly wrote a letter to the Moroccan Sultan, Moulay Ahmed al-Mansur, encouraging him to invade Songhai. Al-Mansur wrote to Ishaq II demanding, among other things, payment of 1 mithqal, a measure of unit of gold, as a task on every camel loading of salt to leave the mines of Taghaza. These salt mines were in disputed territory halfway between Songhai and Morocco. Askia Ishaq II sent an insulting reply, accompanied by a spear and a pair of iron sandals. The iron sandals meant that until the day Al-Mansur wore out those sandals, Askia Ishaq II would never agree to these demands. The idea was that since the sandals were made of iron, they would never be worn out. And thus began a series of events and decisions that led to the invasion of the Songhai Empire by the Moroccans and the eventual collapse of the Songhai Empire. Even before the escaped slave had contacted Al-Mansur, the Sultan was aware that Songhai could be a source of gold, slaves, and other riches because he had a spy living in Gao for several years. Al-Mansur used Ishaq's challenge as an excuse to send an expedition to attack Songhai. Al-Mansur chose as his commander Jawdar Pasha. Pasha is a word that denotes high rank or office. Jawdar was an Islamic convert of Spanish origin. The Moroccan army set out at the end of 1590 with about 4,000 fighting men, including some 2,000 foot soldiers with muskets, a type of light gun with a long barrel, 500 muskets, riding horses, 1,500 Arab spearmen, and 70 Christian slaves armed with a portable big gun. Some of the Moroccan troops probably wore chain-mail armor, which was introduced to the Western Sudan about the same time as firearms. It took about 10,000 camels to carry all the invading army's supplies. These included 4 small cannons, 10 mortars for shooting stone balls into towns. They also had to carry large quantities of gunpowder, tents, and other supplies for the troops, and enough food and water to last them for a journey of at least 40 days across the Sahara Desert. When the Songhai heard the Moroccans were coming, one of the Askia's commanders suggested they send soldiers to fill in the desert wells to deprive the invading army of water. Instead, Askia Ishaq II sent messengers to ask Tuareg chiefs to fill in the wells. Not only did the Tuareg lack any loyalty to Songhai, but the messengers could not even get through because they were attacked by bandits. Jawdar Pasha's troops found the wounded messengers in the desert still carrying the Askia's message. The Songhai leadership failed to act quickly. The Moroccans crossed the Sahara and then took 2 weeks to recover from their exhausting desert journey. The decisive battle took place on March the 12th, 1591, near Tondibi, which is 30 miles north of Gao on the Niger River. The Songhai suffered heavy losses and retreated across the Niger River. They were shielded by courageous troops who protected their rear and fought to the death. Askia Ishaq II then tried to buy off the Moroccan invaders. He offered Jawdar Pasha a tribute of 100,000 gold pieces and 1,000 slaves, hoping this would satisfy the Moroccans and that they would leave Songhai. By this time, the Moroccan troops were exhausted and ill. Jawdar Pasha was prepared to accept the tribute and retreat back across the desert. However, back in Marrakesh, Al-Mansur decided he wanted to retain control of the newly conquered land below the desert. He rejected Askia Ishaq's offer and replaced Jawdar with Mahmud Pasha. Mahmud had instructions to complete the conquest of Songhai. The Moroccans occupied and looted Timbuktu, Gao, and Jenne. They sent the wealth of these cities back to their capital of Marrakesh, where it was used to build fine palaces. What remained of the Songhai army retreated into the countryside. They rebelled against Askia Ishaq II and placed Mahmud Muhammad Gao on the throne. But Askia Muhammad Gao unwisely accepted an invitation to visit Mahmud Pasha and was assassinated. Led by Askianu, a brother of Mahmud Gao, the Songhai continued their resistance to the Moroccan occupation. For 2 years, they fought small but successful ambushes against Mahmud Pasha and his troops, until Mahmud finally gave up and returned to Timbuktu. Nur fought until 1599, but the Moroccans continued to occupy Timbuktu and other urban centers. The Songhai leaders were never able to recover their empire. The great cities of the former Songhai Empire were under Moroccan control. It did not take long for the people who had been conquered by the Songhai to assert their independence and began raiding one another. In the early 17th century, Tuareg nomads of the Sahara began making raids into the Great Bend of the Niger River. The cattle-herding Fulani of the inland delta formed their own state called Masina and began attacking their neighbors. Bamana warriors from upriver southwest of Songhai laid siege to Jene and fought with the Fula armies. Armies from kingdoms in present-day northern Cote d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso also began advancing into southern regions of the former empire. By the 18th century, the former heartland of the Songhai Empire was occupied by several small states, and this marks the end of the great empire of the Songhai. At this time, colonial powers were also gaining a foothold through trade in the sub-Saharan part of Africa. Hence, the hope for the comeback of the Songhai was lost and the empire ceased to exist. Today, the former territories of the Songhai Empire is spread across the countries of the Sahel in the western parts of the African continent. If you enjoyed the video, like and comment on the channel's videos, and if you are new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.